Hey guys, and welcome back. My name's Tom and I'm self-taught polymer clay artist, and I've recently been invited to beta test a new type of clay, Cosclay, which is right here. And in this video I have some things I'm going to show you. We're going to basically make two posable snakes, one done correctly, one done incorrectly on purpose so you can see why. And one of those snakes I'm going to paint, but first sand. And then we're actually going to pose it and see how the paint holds up, because those were the main questions and the comments in the last video. By the way, thank you for the support in that video. It was incredible. I can't believe so many people showed up and said hello. It means everything to me. If you are interested in Cosclay solely for the reason of the posability of it, there is something very important you need to hear in this video. I spoke with the people, the creators of it, and they actually let me know quite a bit of things. So I'm going to share all this information with you right now. When Cosclay is in its raw form, you can bend it as many times as you want while it's on the armature. But once you bake it, and if you plan on baking it again, you cannot bend it. It has to stay in that position until you're finished with all the bakings. Then you can do all your posing and bending and stuff. The reason being is because when you bend it, it causes tension in all the points where it's bent. There's stress there. And then when you bake it again, it causes that stress to release, creating cracks, as you can see in this photo. What I have right here is a piece of Cosclay that I rolled out on setting 6 on the pasta machine. It's not the thickest setting, it's like halfway there almost. Mine goes to 9, setting 9 being the highest or the thickest. And these are two galvanized pieces of hobby wire. The wire shouldn't be very confusing for you. All you should consider is the strength of your wire should meet or exceed the springing effect of the clay itself. What I mean by that is, if you see this right here, when I push this back, when I push this together and let go, it springs out. It'll do this every time. The reason being is because this is the original form that this was baked in, and it kind of freezes into this. You can bend it all around, do what you want, but it'll go back to the original form. So what I'm trying to say is that the wire you hide in there has to be as strong as this springing effect or stronger. I'd like to say a little stronger, that way you have no fuss with your posing aspect of it. It means business. You want to bend it into an L or whatever, you can do that. So let's get started here. I want 2 equal amounts. I like to work in uniform quite a bit. It's just how I roll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out. I don't know if I should have left the excess, but what I'm wanting to achieve here is 2 identical snakes. Well, as close as possible. That way my testing is more accurate, so to speak. And this ruler that I'm using is a self-centering ruler. It's really, really nice. I get them from Hobby Lobby. And I do believe the print, it goes all the way through the material, and this is safe for polymer clays. It doesn't react to it. It's self-centering, and I'm doing that right now. I'm offsetting it. Since I just did it 2 inches wide, I did it on this center line, which is 1 inch. That tells me that this right here is the center of that. So I can actually cut it here like this and have 2 identical pieces. Alright, I'm going to separate these and start with 1. We're just wrapping these, we're going to wrap them identically. And I'm already noticing I probably should have went even thinner with this clay, because it would be easier to wrap. So I'm going to just start like this, and why not embed it a little bit to get it stuck down in there, and then slowly do this number. I'm trying to peel it up off the marble. This stuff has good tack, by the way. I ran it through the pasta machine not too many times actually. I'm kind of surprised on how fast it conditions. As always, you want to avoid air bubbles whenever possible. And I'm going to try to get this as thick as the Snell monster that I'm going to be making after this. Here, let me give you a sneak peek of this thing. That's a drawing that I did in, well, it says 00, so the year 2000. It's old. It's got a coffee stain. I did a better one, but it was stolen from me. I'm going to do something similar to that using this clay. And this, it's not as thick as I wanted it to be. So what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to add that other piece and then just kind of off camera make another one. I'll do the same exact thing. I'll trace my roller and the second time just roll the whole thing. But I'm smoothing the end right here, and this is actually smoothing quite well. You know, prior to starting the second wrap. Give it a little bit of roll here. And since I already said it would be easier wrapping this a little thinner, I'm going to run this through the posh machine. And we'll do this. I got a little trash right here from the posh machine. It's sometimes helpful to take some translucent clay and run it through there, some scrap or even some Super Sculpey or something, and run it through there and run it backwards and stuff, and it kind of grabs up that stuff. It doesn't really matter in this situation. We're going to sand this and paint this anyways. So let's add this to this. Taking up too much time building these things. Okay. Give it another little wrap. It went all the way around, which is what I was looking for. And this is it's a little thick, but at least it's not as thin as it was. This stuff really does smooth very nicely. It's a little rough looking, but that's okay. We're going to sand it anyways, and that might reduce some of the size anyways. So what they were saying, this is a completed, it has form now. There's an armature. Do you see how I'm doing that? And it's not bending. There's a form in here, a rigid skeleton. According to what they were saying, you can bend it again while it's raw as many times as you want. However, that will mush that wire down in there, so be careful when you're doing that. But if I were to bake this and take it out of the oven, you cannot bend it if you plan on baking it again. Like if I were to just bend it into a U and place it back in the oven, it'll be cracked all along the high side of it, where that stress that's created after it's bent, you know, after baking, will be released when it heats again, because this becomes brittle when it's hot. So this is actually ready to be baked. And I got something else fun I want to do. I want to make some scales and put on this piece of clay. This is setting 6. And this will give me a chance to show you some non-tooling detail. I do this all by hand. So I want to make some equal parts. Two ways you could do this. You could roll it into a long snake and then just cut it in equal parts, or like roll it out into a sheet and use something like this and cut grid sections that are even. Those will give you relatively even amounts. But I'm going to take the quick route and roll this into a snake. This stuff is fast. This is some fast clay. It's almost magical. My hands are pretty warm. I just turned on the air conditioner because it was 77 degrees, and I brought that sucker down to 74 because I got 6 CFL bulbs above me, and they are kind of warm. This is an easy little trick that I do. You just cut in half, bring them together, and cut this in half. The idea behind this is the more you cut at one time, the faster, I guess. So I could take this now and put it right here. Of course, my apologies if you're not here to figure out how to cut little pieces of scales, snake scales. I'm trying to do what I know, and it's hard to, make everybody happy. we're testing this. So I got some pieces here. This is very crude. I'm rushing this. I normally would spend more time doing it, but this is close to being fairly the same amount of pieces of clay. Something really quick. Otherwise, it's kind of hard to, if you're just pinching and pulling parts off of your ball of clay you got, that could be difficult. So I do not know if these guys are going to be working on a liquid form like TLS or Bacon Bond, the equivalent for Cosclay. So I don't know if I should put some of my TLS on here to ensure, you know what? Why don't I do half of it? That sounds like a testy type thing to do. So I'm going to just dab on a little of this, or very little bit, because we're just wanting a tack. And I'm going to paint half of this. I'm going to work this around to where it's not thick at all. And if I feel like it's still thick, I will wipe it off. Kind of went a little crazy there, so let me wipe that off. Alright, I'm half tacked and half not. To make a scale, real quickly, this is not a how to make a scale video. You teardrop this like that, and you place it on here, and you just smash it. It depends on how much profile you want of the scale. You just smash it like that, and then on this part you push down and then drag it forward like that. That's a scale. So with the magic of time lapse and a little bit of editing, I can make this relatively quick. Okay, I should probably make a couple more rows. Voila. Okay, now let's cut this thing away so we can take a closer look. Just going to use my palette knife here. Release the Kraken. This is one of my comments on the last video, which is proof that I read the comments. Oh, before I forget, I need to mark this to let me know that this side is the TLS. So I'll just put a T over here. Okay, so I got my two parts here. These will be baked in the oven. I'm going to bake them at 275 for, this is, we would say, a half an inch thick. So 30 minutes. Well, let me double check. Per quarter inch. Okay, so this is going to get baked for 1 hour. This will. This, though, however, will be 30 minutes. It does say on there, do not overbake because it causes splitting and cracking. My next step will be to bake these in the oven. This is going to go for 1 hour, but for 30 minutes into the baking, I'm going to remove this one and let it cool. I will preheat my oven with this marble slab in it. And this right here is a thermostat. You put it in your oven. It's one of the simplest ones you can buy. It's all stainless steel. There's no electronical parts in it or whatever. I just set it on the marble like this. And when this reaches 275, I'll know that it's time to add my clay pieces. Reason I'm bringing this up, sometimes your ovens lie to you without any better way of putting it. Our oven is digital, so when we turn it on and we preheat it, it'll go beep 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 when it's preheated. Well, I put this in there one day, and well, with the marble in too, and I found that when it goes beep beep beep, it's nowhere near. It's like 200 degrees. It's nowhere near 275. It takes a full 15 minutes longer after it claims it preheated to become actually truly 275 degrees. Part of the reason for that is this marble slab acts like a heat sink, so it takes longer for the oven to heat up. And the thermostat's probably on the ceiling of the oven, so it's thinking that it's hot, but the actual area is not. So it's really, really important, if you've never done this and you don't know your oven, or you bought a new oven, put one of these in there so you know exactly what your oven is doing. It will let you know if you're reaching the proper temperature. So I'm going to stick these in the oven at 275, and this is going to be for 1 hour, 30 minutes, because this is a 1/4 inch thick, and we're going to see how this turns out. So until then, I'll be right back. Guys, I have something to share with you really quick. I was a little concerned about something, but I noticed one of the creators, one of the makers of the clay were online. And what I was concerned with is a habit that we're all kind of used to doing, which is leaving our items in the oven and cracking the door and just letting it come to a cool naturally. Apparently that's not necessary at all with this clay. I mean, at all. It's not even fragile when it comes out of the oven. It has its full strength. That doesn't mean pull it out while it's hot with your oven mitts on and change the pose, start messing with, manhandling it. That doesn't necessarily mean do that, but you don't have to worry about it crumbling to the touch, which that's what polymer clay, normally does. At least the kinds I've worked with, they're extremely fragile when hot. Not this stuff. And that's not even the best part. This clay has 0% shrinkage. Not less than 1%. It's 0% shrinkage. I think Super Sculpey was less than 1%, or it was like really, really low, which allowed it to be able to be wrapped around like a glass vase without it splitting, the clay splitting from the shrinkage. Shrinkage is your worst enemy. That's why air dry clays are so terrible. I don't like air dry clay anything because it's like 40% 40% water, so that's displacement when all that evaporates. But this has 0% shrinkage, and you can take your items out and immediately submerge it in cold water. You don't have to worry about damaging them in the process. That's mind-boggling to me. The more I'm learning about this clay, that it's crazy. I can't even believe I'm a part of this. But I wanted to share with you that real quick. I gotta go. One of my items are done. It's been 30 minutes, and I gotta go pull that out of the oven. But I just wanted to share with you that real quick. I almost feel like I'm cheating because I got all this inside information. It doesn't hurt having extra info to help speed me up on figuring this clay out and learning it. So, I don't know what you think about that, but it's got me. Let me know what you think. But I gotta go get this out of the oven. I'll be right back. Alright, so for my personal experience, holding my first piece of cured, rubberized Cosclay felt like being a kid on Christmas morning. I am not even joking with you. It is amazing. So here we are, and it feels so good. There was really no detail to this. This is all done by hand, but it's exactly how I left it. So that's something that you should probably be excited to hear. So what you put in the oven is what you get back out. There is no loss, no shrinking, no anything. Taking into consideration what I learned talking to him, the thicker the piece or the larger the piece, the more it becomes like a plastic. The thinner or the smaller the piece, the more it is a rubberized item. What I'm guessing from that is, obviously, if it's really big, huge piece, that it's not going to have much of give as rubber, which that actually makes sense to me. So I don't know exactly how much this will bend. We're fixing to find out. But look at the back right here. This was from removing it with the palette knife. I ripped some clay off right here where it's a little shallow, and it all collected right here. And look at this. I'm damaging it with my sharp fingernail, but it's not coming off. That wasn't even intended to be there. So this is actually good. I'm glad this happened back here because I'm going to sand this, and this will be my desanding experiment. But let's go ahead. I know you're dying for me to do this, but having taken that into consideration, this is not going to like bend all over the place. But as you can see, let's go sideways so you can see better. That is rubber, people. Like I said, this is a thicker piece, so it's not going to be super hyper rubber. I'm not going to be able to fold this in half. Not without destroying it. but it's like if it was way thinner, like say if it was just this piece right here without all that stuff on it, it would have even more flexibility. So the smaller and the thinner the piece, the more the flexibility. But look at this. It's coming apart right here where these two scales are, where these scales come together. If you ask me, that's just an expansion joint, a natural expansion joint. It doesn't compromise the sculpture. You wouldn't really be doing this. What this means, this is not even about how flexible it is. This is about durability. This stuff is extremely durable. And I took it out of the oven and put it under water and like mashed it with cloth with confidence. It wouldn't break on me or anything. That is amazing. So I already know that these two things are going to be hard to bend because they're so big. I wasn't thinking this should be a 1/4 inch thick or even thinner. And then I'd be able to fold it into a Celtic heart. Not that I know how to do that, by the way. But what I got here is some sandpaper. This is 80 grit and this is 150 grit. This is the last bit of 80 grit I had, and it looks like it's squared with the camera, but I actually have this at an angle, so I'm sitting a little weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick one of these. I guess I'll go with this one, and this is the one I'll break. I'll test. I'll show you how not to do that, what not to do, and I'll destroy this piece in the process. So let me do a quick sanding. Everybody's wanting to know, does this stuff sand? I would like to know that too. So I'm going to start with 80 grit. This is for fast cutting. Let's zoom in a little bit here. Now we're a little bit closer so you can see just that little bit of scuffing I did. That's a pretty good sign right there. It looks like it's sandable to me, but let's go with it. Let's see if we can't make this look good down here. I'm going to check it every so often to see how it's doing. Right now we got it pretty level, but it's still low right here in the middle. Which is another interesting thing. I don't know how accurate my sanding is going to be now, because usually I'm used to it being a very rigid item. So I got to keep that in mind, how I place pressure on this. It's sanding typical of any other clay. Pretty much. There's really no point in going all the way down to make all this disappear. What I will do, because I'm also curious about, is can I get these heavy gouges out of here? The 150 is a lot finer than 80. This is very rough actually. So I should be able to get a lot of these out right away with this. Oh yeah. It's a lot finer right now. There's still some heavy gouges from the previous 80. I just go a little bit further. The stuff just collected and created a little ball, which was interesting. Wow. Let me go a little bit further. There's still little gouges right here. And then I'll zoom in really close and give you hopefully a good quality shot of this. I got right here a piece of 400 grit, which is even finer than the 150. So I'm just gonna use that for a second. Okay, you can see how smooth this is now. There's still a dip in the middle where I didn't sand it all the way. I don't see the point, but this is actually very flat. It's ready for paint. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's some plaquing going on. Those are described as half moon or full moon circles that might be in your It's in pretty much all polymer clays I've noticed. Some are better at hiding it than others. I think it has something to do with this being semi-translucent, but it's not a defect or anything. If anything, that's an authenticity that this is a polymer clay and not some kind of poured cast. You know what I'm saying? It's not a copy or anything. That these don't never compromise the structure of an item, or at least not in rigid clays. I don't know about this, but I was just messing with it and I don't see any problem with this. If you're painting it, then it's not an issue, but if it has to be raw, then you'll have these things here. It'll be interesting to see how their colored clays perform when they come out, how well they hold up. But so this is this sandable? Yes, 100%. Which I'm gonna assume that you can drill it and tool it and do that other stuff too. So I'm going to sand this long piece a little bit to kind of clean it up, slowly rotating it as I go. I'm trying to hold my fingers all across it evenly because I know this is kind of rubber now. It does have a metal armature in it, but it's rubberized. You can see how this is leaving bare spots. Those are low areas. This is why I sand almost everything that I do. And if you wonder, like, some of my things might appear like they come out of a factory or something, it's because I hone all the surfaces. Even if it's a contour, it can be, you can hold the sandpaper at a curve and, you know, hone it and take out all the waviness and imperfections out of something. And this is, I'm doing it to this because that is something I normally do. I want to test this in the same manner that I would use all of my other clays. Okay, we have it really, really close. I have one little dip right here and right here on the end. This was a seam, this artifact line right here. So if I were to, if I needed this gone, I would just keep going. Now that's almost gone completely, that seam. So that's pretty much the gist of sanding. I'm hoping reducing the diameter of this will allow it to be more posable. I already know this is not going to pose very well, or at least I'm going to guess, because what do I know? Because it's so big, it's so, the thickness of it, it'll bend, but it won't be able to do real sharp turns, which makes sense. That really does make sense. Sometimes it's easier to take a piece of sandpaper and curve it like this. Looks pretty good. Well, not really. There's more sanding that needs to be done, but I don't want to spend all day sanding this. Which that would be for anything. It's not because it's harder to sand. It just takes time to do this type of real delicate. That looks really good. I don't know if you can tell the waviness of this one versus how much smoother this one is. I don't even know how well the focus is on that, to be honest. It's late. It's like 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm steady at this. So now I got my sanding fit out of the way. I'm going to cut the camera off and vacuum this stuff up real quick. Ooh, maybe not. 2 a.m. Well, I'll pull it off and just set it somewhere. And I'm going to clean up my area so we can paint. We're going to paint some stuff, then let it dry. And then we're going to flex some stuff. We're going to bend it. And I'm going to destroy this by doing something improper, something that you're not supposed to do. And what I mean by that is, I'll go ahead, I can do it now actually. We're going to bend it. There, I just bent this. This is the now what I'm getting at is right here there's tension and stress in that rubber. So what they mean by don't bend it unless you're done with all of your baking is if I stick this in the oven and bake it, which I'm going to bake it for, I don't know, 30 minutes or so. Because let's just pretend the amount of clay I add onto it is just a little bit, so I don't need that much more. We'll bake it 30 more minutes, and then we're going to see what happens right here. It's a rule. You have to follow the rule. Do not bend your stuff unless you're done with all the baking. This is done with the baking because I'm going to paint this and we'll be done. But yeah, this is bendable. Even this large piece is bendable. Let's give it a dog leg. Only a construction worker would know what that means. Wow. So now I have stress here, here, and here on this item. I'll leave it just like that, and I'll bake it for 30 more minutes, and we'll see what's going on with this. I hope that makes sense what I'm saying. If you're the type of person that bakes in stages, don't do any bending to your item unless you're completely done with all the baking. But when it's raw, meaning in this state, you can bend it all you want while it's on your work. That's just something important that I wanted to point out. Okay, before we begin our painting, remember earlier when I bent that piece and I told you I was going to put it in the oven and bake it again? This is exactly what happens. It didn't take no time at all for this to happen, actually. It was fairly fast. These were new points of stress or tension that was placed on the clay. When I bent the wire, it caused the clay to be moved into an unnatural form, something other than what it was baked into. And this is what happens. It's not a defect or anything, it's just basic physics. Something interesting to keep in mind, you can bake in stages as long as you want, as many times as you want. You can't move the wires too drastically to cause tension on this clay. So when I go to build my snail monster, they suggest to use a relaxed pose, something that would be in between your minimum and maximum pose or whatever. Find the medium between it. So let's go ahead and paint some stuff. We're going to see how this stuff performs painting. This is Cloverfield's green. This is acrylic paint, just something you'd get from Walmart. It's not high end or anything. I wanted to try acrylic paint because mainly that's what I have, and I'm thinking this will actually work. So let's give it a shot. I'm going to use a nylon brush, and I'm just going to paint this piece right here green. I'm painting this green because my snail monster, I want to make it green. Seems like a pretty smart color to use, I guess, to test anyway, since I'm going to be using it here shortly. And that sanding job really did wonders because it's really smooth now. Your prep work will always dictate your final quality of their paint job. What we're checking is to see how well the paint reacts to the flexibility factor of this clay. Alright, I'll let that dry and I'll give it another coat here in a minute. I don't want to bore y'all with the same color, so I'm going to paint these scales. It says it's real red acrylic, so this could be like a fiery dragon or something. Probably one of the coolest things about artwork is the point where you decide what colors you're gonna paint your work, because that's just as much as the creative factor is the sculpting. Like the dragon I made, I chose cool colors, I guess, but it could have been any combination. It could have been cool as a jet black dragon, a red one, but I'm getting this paint down in all the parts. I don't want any of the Cosclay showing. I can even bend it and get into those expansion joints. This stuff paints really well, because I didn't do any prep work to this, if you remember. I just baked this in the oven and pulled it straight out, and this is what you get. The method I use to make these scales kind of make it easy, and there's no need for tooling. Okay, this is the moment we've all been waiting for, pretty much. I've got this painted and it's dry, so the question now is, can we bend it, and how will this paint react? I just got a split right here, but that's an air pocket under my clay. Let's take a closer look right here. Yeah, that's an air pocket underneath the clay, because I got a real fine layer of clay right here. So that's my error right there. You're supposed to try to avoid having air pockets in your work. So that's no big deal. But this is the paint itself, as you can see. I'm bending it all around. Oop. And it's not cracking or anything. And the clay itself is holding up. That's crazy. I found that, I guess bending it, when I bent it that way, it caused pressure in that air pocket, causing it to explode. There's another air pocket right here. That's just the way I rolled this. I probably didn't do it the best way possible. I probably would take more care on an actual sculpture. But it's something to keep in mind, that air pockets will affect the clay a little bit, which that's understandable. But no, I'm bending this all around and I'm getting no problems or anything. So this is supposedly, you can bend it indefinitely, and that's what it's feeling like. The wire inside is almost not strong enough. You see it kind of bounces back a little bit. It's because it's so thick. This is actually a rather thick item to be trying to pose. But that's kind of the size I want to do for the Snell monster. I'm just going to have to be very careful about air pockets when I go to do that, because they are going to they will sabotage me. So let's take a look at this too. Once again, these are acting as expansion joints and stuff. Having a sublayer like this under your work, if you have to have a bunch of details like that, might actually be smart, because if it has to flex or whatever, these will split like that and not compromise the rest of the work, because this is actually fine. This whole layer right here, which is quite durable, all of it is. I mean, these are all stuck on there really well. It's not going to come off. But they're, I wonder if I had a TLS and I actually put TLS in between all of these, or their equivalent of the liquid form, if these would actually stay put. But I'm going to guess no, because they even said heavy gouges in your texturing will affect the strength of the bend. But even like this, say this was the subsurface to a much more elaborate design, like you put fat rings everywhere, but they were like close together. Those little rings would actually be moving and expanding and contracting with each other, but because they're riding on such a stable surface, that might actually be smart. So like if you're doing an octopus or something and you had all these suction cups and stuff, don't just detail and tool them onto a one single piece. Do something like this, bake this first, and then come back and do all your crazy detail work on top of that. So the detail work just acts as expansion joints and stuff. But no, this is really nice. I'm really liking this. There's another air pocket right here. Let's see if I can get that one to pop. Yep. So when you bend it, it causes that pressure in that air pocket causes it to it has to release somehow. But other than those two air pockets, this is really nice. The test is actually, will the paint stay on here? It has nothing to do with my defects on sculpting or whatever. Nobody's perfect. I'm definitely not perfect. And this whole bending and flexing concept is new for me anyway, so now I'll actually pay more attention to air pockets and stuff like that, because before it really wasn't an issue. Your sculptures don't move, so how would that ever be an issue? This is so new. This is so new and it's so awesome. But here you go. There's some Cosclay. I flexed this, and this is the durability demonstration on something like this. It shows how expansion joints are smart if you can do them, or heavy gouging into your work will compromise the overall strength of the stability, I should say, of the flexing factor. But this is an amazing little experiment here. This is the end of the video, guys. I know it's a very long video. Sorry about that. I would appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up and let me know what you think about in the comments. There's plenty to talk about. I've been here for almost 40 minutes or so. I really appreciate you for being patient with me. It took me a while to get this video together, and the next video will be somewhat quicker. And until then, I'll see you all here again soon. Thank you so much for watching. You're all awesome.